From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Microsoft Outlook has a critical new bug. CISO warns of additional LastPass developments, and AI-generated YouTubers spread info stealers. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been bringing to you on this week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we get a chance for some inside opinion and expertise on these stories and more from our guest, JJ Agha, the CISO at FanDuel. JJ, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks, Rich, for having me. I appreciate the call out for expert, but we'll see how good we are on that.
We will demand expertise, JJ. Don't worry. Don't
I'll
worry.
try my best.
Remember, you can join us on YouTube Live. To do so, go to CISOseries.com, hit the events dropdown, and look for the cybersecurity headlines week in review image. If you can count, it's the third one down. Just click on it to join us. We've got about 20 minutes, though. We're not going to wait for you to follow those detailed instructions, so let's hop to it. Our first one here, critical Microsoft Outlook bug POC shows how easy it is to exploit. Security researchers have shared technical details for exploiting a critical Microsoft Outlook vulnerability for Windows that allows hackers to remotely steal hashed passwords by simply sending an email. Microsoft yesterday released a patch for the security flaw, but it's been exploited as a zero-day vulnerability in NTLM relay attacks since at least mid-April 2022. And if you check your calendar, that's for about a whole year. The essence of the hack is that no user interaction is needed, as exploitation occurs when Outlook is open and the reminder is triggered on the system. So JJ, this appears to have all the makings of kind of a big deal, a proof of concept, but one that seemingly has already been seen in the wild, and it appears to be a zero-click, which could have enormous ramifications considering Microsoft Outlook's massive user base. Is this how you see it? I'm curious for your perspective.
It seems like I'm stuck in kind of a while loop, right? So I'll say that the attack vectors that you're describing, they happen all the time. I think the question is going to be scope and impact, and where you're looking at it from Outlook and you're, oh my God, Outlook's probably installed on a ton of our infrastructure, our systems each and every day. It's about really kind of the NTLM, right? What actually are the components and the technical kind of infrastructure that you have to be to kind of be susceptible to these type of attacks. And then the other side of that house is kind of like, I think the bigger deal really is not about the attack vector, is that our company is actually having the appropriate compensating controls to protect against someone doing past the hash, right? Stealing an NTLM hash and kind of having now full access to the domain. I think that's really kind of the struggle and bigger deal that I think larger programs and larger companies are really dealing with, about adding compensating controls that we suspect that credentials are going to steal. So do I think it's a nothing burger? No, but I think it's partly just it's dependent on what your actual stack looks like. I think we get very scared when we see zero click, remote access, 9.8 on the CVE scale. I think really is just what's the likelihood of this hitting your organization based off of kind of all the different factors that need to be there.
Yeah, and that's the kind of perspective I love, because yeah, you're right. It's easy to get scared by these big headlines, but like thinking about like, okay, how can like what are the organizations? What is the technical scope that we need to have to be like fully to be prepared for the implications of this? That's a fantastic perspective. Thank you so much for that. Next up here, CISA warns of actively exploited Plex bug after the LastPass breach. Yes, CISA is talking about a home media server software. CISA has added a nearly 3-year-old high-severity remote code execution vulnerability in the Plex media server to its catalog of exploited security flaws. The flaw could allow threat actors with admin privileges to abuse the camera upload feature and remotely execute arbitrary Python code in low-complexity attacks. The issue is being linked to the incident involving a LastPass senior DevOps engineer whose computer was hacked last year and a keylogger was installed. Seems to be a case in point of the self-replicating nature of hacks and breaches. It's not just email addresses that are at risk, it turns out. I'm curious, JJ, what's your take on this development?
First, quickly taking a pass on the Plex vulnerability camera upload, right? You see this happen with like FMmpeg, right? And you're doing encoding and you're trying to get low level, execution. It happens. So I don't think there's really blame to Plex. And I don't think anyone is looking to Plex like, oh my God, how this could happen. I think that really the concern here is like LastPass again, breach. Oh my God. I've never heard those two words in a sentence before. But I think where going back to like similar, can a single credential, can a single hash really take you down? Um, yeah, if a single credential can take you down, that's the I think the story here. From my take, really is that we need to be better about ephemeral keys, leveraging kind of secret automation. So we suspect that keys are going to be stolen, whether it was the Code Cov incident where everyone's kind of CI/CD was exposed, and so pretty much every single artifact and credential that you had in your build pipeline, it's pretty much sayonara. So I think we really need to be in a state where programs are working with the development teams to kind of think about, if this X happens, how do we kind of automate these actions from an incident response? And they're happening more and more often than not, where you're seeing JFrog, sorry, not JFrog, Log4j incidents, right? Those are where we really want to kind of push those conversations, and where we really could help out our teams internally about building out services. So it's less about security becoming a consultancy, and it's really, let me help build out processes and enable kind of automation for when your secret gets lost, because it's just going to happen, and ensuring we have appropriate device trust and conditional access. So if that secret is lifted and is going to be used to access your AWS account or try to SSH in your RDS, it can't come from Russia. It can't come from China or a random IP from a VPN. We need to have attribution to who that person is, that device, when they're trying to authenticate. So that's really kind of my take, is that we need to get better about the controls, and less worried about these incidents, because they're just going to happen.
Yeah, that really has stood out to me with the LastPass breach. Is it's not so much their password management infrastructure, it was the process for the people that had the most trusted access to that, and completely to your point, in terms of the processes that are around, controlling that access seemed, I mean, again, looking at it in hindsight, but it seemed wholly inadequate. And at least CISA is getting on this as a potential exploit. Although, side note, it makes me extremely like, we've seen so many home NAS and now Plex attacks and stuff like that. I'm like, keeping all of this stuff off the internet.
Well, I mean,
This is
if you
just
look
for
at,
me.
like, if your vault gets stolen, right, and that's definitely concerning, because now we tell everyone, hey, put in a password manager. Well, now, great. Now these password managers also do MFA, right? And
Yeah.
so now you have all the keys to get everything, and we're telling everyone, "Hey, do MFA." Now it's go YubiKey. So I think we need to get to a state where, okay, yes, those two controls are defeated, but there's other controls to prevent this from actually happening, and then just leveraging good detection and response, that wins 9 times out of 10.
All right, our next story here. AI generated YouTube videos spread info stealers. Researchers at CloudSec warned that it observed a 200 to 300% increase month over month on the number of YouTube videos with links to info stealing malware in the description. Researchers say threat actors increasingly use AI generated content to quickly push out new videos, often in the case of an account takeover. Generally, links promise free software downloads for things like Photoshop and AutoCAD, but instead install, the info stealers. JJ, these videos are usually not great quality, but if you're just looking for a quick answer, that's what YouTube's used for a lot of times. Likely you're not going to be too discriminating if you find, the Photoshop hack that you're looking for to, erase that thing in that photo you don't like. Do you have any thoughts about how to prevent people, especially employees, from falling for this kind of reverse spam situation?
I mean, this is similar to phishing, SMS phishing, right? Hey, I'm your CEO. Can you please, send me a bunch of gift cards? I need your wire information or your password. So with this, if you think about kind of the education, I think education, yes, is part of it. Hey, these are kind of attack vectors, and informing kind of your users and your organization. But I think we have to go a little bit further, right? If we are allowing credentials to be stolen, and I think there's a theme here, right, about credentials and
Definitely.
conditional access, we can't just let that, whether it's a credential or a malware that got into someone's browser and was able to steal their kind of cookie and then pass that along. We really need to kind of think beyond these secrets to authenticate users and get better attribution to the authentication and authorization controls. So yes, I want to educate them, but we need to make it kind of, we don't want to hurt people if they need to click links to do their job. We don't want to hurt people if they need to search and look for things in order to do their job. I think the question is educating them on what are good things to look at. But as far as this, from like malware, saying, hey, or trying to get Adobe Photoshop software. Listen, we were all in there. Right? We were all downloading stuff from Napster, LimeWire. I think this just reminds me a lot of that. Where hey, I need that software. I'm gonna go download it. I need this key, and then oh my god, it bricked my laptop. Right? It bricked my hard drive. So I think we're kind of seeing the what is old is new and what is new is old again. We're kind of seeing that recycle. The AI aspect really is kind of that speed, right? It's that we're no longer having to kind of rinse and repeat, and we could kind of iterate on there. And I think that's um, the concern is just the speed that attacks can iterate and be custom.
Well, and it prevents YouTube from doing things like hashing because some of these videos are being generated. They are unique AI generated videos, and so instead of just being like, "Oh, this is a spam video," so if there's an account takeover, we can just have a hash, look for it, and automatically prevent the upload. Now, these are fairly novel, even if they are kind of cookie cutter. It makes it a little bit, they're the same controls wouldn't work that would worked last year, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and we have to give it a round of applause to ChatGPT 4 for creating this video. Right there, this entire monologue has been great.
Exactly. All right, next up here, Blackbaud to pay $3 million for misleading ransomware disclosure. In 2020, cloud software provider Blackbaud suffered a ransomware attack which affected 13,000 customers from charities, foundations, nonprofits, and universities in the US, Canada, the UK, and the Netherlands. According to the SEC, Blackbaud initially stated that the attackers had not gained access to donor bank account details or social security numbers. However, shortly thereafter, company staff learned that the threat actors had indeed accessed and stolen the sensitive information, but failed to report it to management. This led the company filing an SEC report the following month, which omitted vital information about the breach and also downplayed associated risk, passing them off as hypothetical. Blackbaud agreed to pay a $3 million civil penalty to settle the misreporting charges brought by the SEC. So, JJ, every week seems there's a story where, I have to look over my hypothetical and sometimes my non-hypothetical glasses. I couldn't get them on my nose fast enough and give all of these companies the look. In a week where everyone involved in SVB seems to have forgotten the rules they learned in Banking 101, we, see a company seemingly not playing nice with SEC regulations. Do you see this willingness for people to blatantly ignore the rules and laws of business as another channel for cyber criminals to leverage?
Yes, I mean, if you're looking at this ambiguity, undefined space, right? There's not kind of and if you look at from a SEC cybersecurity disclosure requirement, as a whole, and what that kind of stemmed up after the Equifax hack, it's really not defined yet, right? What is a breach? What is an incident? What is a vulnerability? Right? They're working on those regulations, and so now there's this big opaque gray area for folks to kind of navigate through. And so I think we're always looking, or I should say, the attackers are always looking for any advantage, any opportunity for that. So yes, they are. Now, I think on the flip side, right, are folks blatantly taking it, not doing the required work for them on kind of due diligence on incident disclosure? I think it's partly just it's dependent on the culture of the organization. Do we have kind of the appropriate run books defined for breach notification? So you kind of get into this space where you're always going to find out more and you're always going to learn more. And it's kind of someone has to make the decision of we need to kind of, hey, cut the 8K. We need to report, provide that information within that timeliness of whether 72 or 48 hours, but be transparent and constantly drive that communicate early, communicate often so that we're not waiting for more information. And then if you let that dwell, then there's more questions to be asked. So, just like any customer support ticket, right? If you get response every day, hey, I'm working on it, you feel a lot better than this happened. We'll come back to you when we're ready.
North Korea targets security researchers. An interesting story from this week for sure. Mandiant reports it spotted the North Korea-linked threat actor UNC 2970 operating a phishing campaign that's been in place since June 2022. The campaign uses 3 new malware families, specifically focusing on security researchers. It uses job recruitment-based lures in a spear phishing approach. These lures impersonated legitimate recruiters and eventually shifted conversations from places like LinkedIn to WhatsApp, where it would deliver a malicious Word document to install a back door. So JJ story is a little similar to the malicious YouTube stories in some respects. However, there seems to be added urgency given we're seeing a lot of tech firms announcing large scale layoffs. I'm sure some security folks have definitely been affected by this, meaning lots of people fearfully looking for that next job. Maybe makes for easy pickings for North Korean spearfishers. I'm curious, what can management do to help, given that they might be the ultimate victims of these backdoors?
I mean, and I think first off, like we feel terrible, right? Anytime this happens. And so if you look at us as a community within the CISO org and just trying to help and support this, there's not really a charter, like who supports this, right? How do we actually help out, right? To your point of these victims backdoor, it's someone trying to pretend to be us. So I think just during these times of uncertainty, it is difficult. But what I think has been helpful is working, the security team, working with HR, working with their chief people officer to kind of talk through the how can we be proactive on these are our ways to communicate. Right, you're not going to see us on WhatsApp. Please, ensure that you get official greenhouse emails. Please make sure you get official, company.com emails. Being upfront that posting in your job description or job site really should just be helpful. I think there's always the concern, right, that maybe the recruiters are going to be, well, that's going to detract our good candidates because we're going to have a big sign that says caution, please be aware of fake job postings. But if someone really wants to come to your company, they're going to look past that and they're not going to be detracted by that. But it's more meaningful for the folks that are in that unfortunate space and time right now where they are looking for that next job. They are kind of eagerly looking for the next opportunity and are being taken advantage of it. And you have to feel a sense of accountability because they're using your company. Right? And
Yeah,
I think that's the big piece there that drives the action for teams is that you should feel a sense of, well, that doesn't feel good with me. I want to take action. I want to at least help to make sure we deflect these opportunities from happening.
Well, and even from a self-interested standpoint, I would imagine that would make you a more if you're upfront and saying, we're monitoring for phishing attacks that are using our company name and stuff like that. To me, that makes me feel like, I'm looking at, if I'm applying for a job there, that's an organization that's more on top of stuff and would kind of make it more appealing to me in the first place.
All right. Well, we'll take that soundbite and send it off to every single chief people officer.
All right, next here, senators call on CISA to examine cybersecurity risk of Chinese consumer drones. A bipartisan group of senators is asking CISA to examine consumer drones made by a company with deep ties to the Chinese Communist Party, warning that they could be used to spy on U.S. critical infrastructure. Several companies are in the process of expanding the use of consumer drones across the U.S. This goes for everything from food delivery to emergency services. The senators are placing their focus on Shenzhen DJI innovation technology, but in an encouraging display of bipartisanship, they're asking CISA for a wider scope. If you want bipartisan support, anything about China will get the aisles shaking hands faster than anything. But let's look at all the factors here at play. A high-def camera, microphone, internet connection built into a device that can fly pretty much anywhere. What could go wrong? Drones are, of course, without a doubt, a great advantage in many areas of industry, but just like that attractive smart doorbell, no one wants to look under the covers. JJ, I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
This reminds me a lot of Hikvision in the late 2010s, early 20, where everyone had it, cheap, great product, great, and then we go, oh my god, what's going on? We're seeing backdoors, we're seeing calls out to China, and so I think we're running into that similar to the Shenzhen DJI drones, where they're actually now just cameras. To your point, flying with probably cellular. I don't say probably. I don't want to stoke the flames here, but there is definitely a concern. Now, we need to understand the actual risk and the software running on these devices to determine if this risk or vulnerability could actually be leveraged. I think if history has told us potentially, right, and I don't want to kind of make any assumptions, I think for us, like we have to, and what we did with Hikvision, a lot of organizations moved away from Hikvision, and we're no longer going to do that. We blocked all outbound connections, right, to non-approved IPs. So even if you're using Hikvision, at least you prevented kind of that CNC calls back for data exfiltration. Unfortunately, for these drones, whether they are for commercial or for residential, pretty much it's everyone. No one's going to have a network to proxy their drone connections. So for this, I think we do owe the due diligence. I feel bad right now. I want to call it. I feel bad for CISA because it's just like they're running into the same struggles and challenges that every single security program has. What's a priority? Which one do I need to do? Do I need to do this drone? Do I need to do this last malware? Is this the ransomware? So for CIS, I really think it's just the how do they prioritize? How can they commit on it? And because we can't assess everything, right? And I think that's the risk-based approach us that we're all going to have to take on assessing this. But if you ask me, my thoughts are we're seeing a similar pattern here. I'm would be and am concerned about that from that perspective. But is it a high likelihood? Right? We just need to determine it. I think we have a hypothesis if it could happen. Let's just validate it. So I implore anyone who with a drone to rip it apart, reverse engineer it, and let us know.
Please do. When you get it under the Christmas tree, that's the first thing I want. I want to see you do. Actually, that'd be kind of amazing. All right, and we'll get out of here. Speaking of CISA, our last story for today, CISA creates new ransomware vulnerability warning program. CISA has announced the creation of a new ransomware vulnerability warning pilot, or RVWP program, which will see CISA assess flaws commonly associated with known ransomware exploitation. After finding these vulnerabilities, the agency will warn critical infrastructure entities with the goal of enabling mitigation before a ransomware incident. Presumably, there will be a DJI drone flying over that critical infrastructure when they get that warning. Another in a series of proactive cybersecurity undertakings from the government. And JJ, to your point of trying to prioritize all of these different threat vectors that are out there for CISA, sounds like a great idea. But a root cause of so much cyber insecurity in business is the pressure for companies to do things faster and at lower cost. I'm curious, what would a program like this need to be truly effective?
I mean, what you just called faster and at lower cost, right? I think those are all the pressures we are dealing with today, not just in security, but in every single, technical and not even just technical, in every single company. I would just I think this is a great program because I think unfortunately sometimes programs don't even know how to prioritize a vulnerability, right? What is the right one? What do I need to do? Then they go pay for software and they're going to say, hey, this software is going to tell me exactly what I need to care about. I think the hope is, and my hypothesis is that this will tell you, hey, this is a vulnerable service that you have that can be exploited right now. And so I think the biggest thing is taking action. So I think where you look at where programs struggle really is kind of around vulnerability management, vulnerability discovery, and they really just fixate on the vulnerability discovery. They're just scanning everything. They're just saying, great, I now know I'm vulnerable till the cows come home. And so, great, I have 2,000 vulnerabilities. Which one should I prioritize? What are the actual controls to mitigate those vulnerabilities that may not even be exploitable? So I think that's really where programs need to spend their time is around tracking and kind of thinking about vulnerability discovery and remediation as part of the larger vulnerability management program, right? It's not just great that you've discovered, but how are you thinking about remediation, working with your partners, defining the right SLOs, your patching and configuration cadence there. But I think from this program, I think you have to kind of do it in a two-pronged approach. Say we're going to do this, provide that evidence, and then give folks runbooks about how they should kind of take action on remediation of these findings. But I think it's difficult when you think about that public and private sector relationship. CISA NIST has existed for years. Folks look at the NIST CS 853 as the Bible, but no one really kind of uses it day in and day out. So I think it's a story as old as time. But I think what they're doing is great from this perspective.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, JJ, was there any story from the week in our rundown or just throughout the week that, gave you a big thumbs up or an eye roller for you as you were looking at the news this week?
I mean, I think LastPass, right, is just as more information is kind of being slowly squeezed out, if you will. I think it's just more of that eye roll, like, oh my God, just be upfront and transparent. That's all we ask for in this, in security and in the community. If you are able to just share what you can, speak it in plain English, we're very happy to understand. It's a mistake. We get it.
Yeah, this stuff is hard, but like you have to let us know.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. All right. Well, JJ Agha, the CISO at FanDuel, thank you so much for being on the show. This was amazing. You were bringing the fire, bringing the good takes. Always appreciate it. Where can people find you online if they want to follow you there? And is FanDuel hiring right now?
So we are hiring. We both for security and other positions. So definitely take a look at our careers page on FanDuel.com. You can find me on Jonathan Agha at LinkedIn or J squared JAY squared X2 on Twitter.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show. Just really a fun conversation. Reminder, there will be no Super Cyber Friday next week, but we will be back with another episode of the Week in Review show. In the meantime, you can still get your daily news fix through cybersecurity headlines. You're going to hear our fantastic crew of presenters there every single day. Give us about 6 minutes and we'll get you all caught up. And remember, you can subscribe to the show through our newsletter on LinkedIn. There you can read and hear the show right from your inbox. Just go to the CISO Series page on LinkedIn to subscribe. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Stroffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.